Regarding the soil, so we had several buried A and B horizons. So those A and B horizon are horizon of soil which are first either linked to an increasing of organic matter in the buried A horizon, or for the buried B, it's the horizon you can find normally below A. So if you find a B, you can have a missing A, and it also counts, let's say, to record pedogenesis. So all those horizons are linked with bioturbation, secondary calcification, meaning you have a period with a lot of precipitation and vegetation grow, and then it's decreasing, because you need to have this decrease to have calcification. Regarding the soil, they are well developed. The soil are spreading between 11,000 and 7,000 BP, so they are present all over the humid period of the Holocene. No pollen. Surprise, yes. Not enough, at least. So as a summary, we have a clear humid period which is recorded between 11,000 and 8,000, so that's the optimum of the Holocene humid period, BP. Then we have a significant absence of record, which is really surprising, but from a global point of view, not that much, at around 8.2. 8.2 is also an Irish event, so it's a global event of drier and also colder condition in the North Hemisphere, and so it's really impressive to find it somehow with the absence of humid data in our record. Then we have a moist period between 7,500 and 5,200. At the really beginning of the early Bronze Age period, you can see also that here we don't have any record, so it means that during the early Bronze Age, we already had those drier conditions. So according to the data we have in Al-Hajba, doesn't mean that it's the same for everywhere in Oman, but in Al-Hajba, during the early Bronze Age, the conditions were already dried or similar to the one we know now, according to the proxy we used. And then, in the Iron Age, surprisingly, some small pikes, discontinuous wet signals that pop up from many different proxies. So that's a nice new data. So for anthropogenic activity, we studied the ditch system, the palynology also, geochemistry, but on melanoides, and anthracology. For all the sections we open, we use first magnetometry to try to identify some anomalies that are useful, and so we really target the space we wanted to open, so it was absolutely not random. The type of area we open were either ditches, so mostly the ones that are surrounding circular buildings. And the study of these ditches were, in fact, we studied like the host sediment in which the ditches are excavated and also the infilling of the ditches. And what we discovered is that the ditches are likely connected to a superficial alluvial aquifer, which is trapped between two waterproof layers, which are the calcrites. Calcrite 1 and 2 are waterproof layers, and the loose pebbles are the superficial aquifer. Those ditches in Al-Hajba try to reach. Michele found a similar condition in Salut, so we have a double cross confirmation about the use of this superficial alluvial aquifer. Also regarding the snails, melanoides, we set up, we managed to class them into some types of isotopic signal according to the variation of the isotopic pattern. So the wider the isotopic pattern is, and the most exposed to different source of water the snail is as well. So when the snail is exposed to rainfall or to evaporation or to different inputs of water coming from the rain, coming from the wadi, coming from the groundwater, the signal gonna have a large variation in the delta 18O pattern. But when the snail is feeding by a single source of water, which is very stable and not influenced by evaporation, then the pattern of the delta 18O gonna be really steady, and the variation gonna be very flat. And all the gastropod melanoides we found in ditches got those type of record, which are and also those record, the isotopic data clearly match with the data of the groundwater of Al-Hajba. So thanks to that, we were able also to say that those snails were living in an environment which was feeding by groundwater. And regarding the phallage of Al-Hajba, we can also see that they also exploit the same alluvial aquifers as the ones that have been exploited by the ditches. So people that were excavating phallage had already the knowledge of the substrate, let's say, and how it's working from an hydrological point of view. We also found some strange excavation, which are not ditches, and which are in fact excavation it's a clear excavation in sediment, which are mainly loose sediment, so not calcrete anymore. And those excavations are then backfilled with enriched sediments with a lot of organic material. And we think that those excavations are made to locally increase the humidity and grow stuff. Can be various types of plants, because inside those excavations we always found a lot of roots from different generations, a lot of bioturbation, and also a lot of charcoal. And in this section, KS 55, we managed to securely date this infilling with 3 fireplaces, and they all belong to the middle to late Umamnar period. So if you want to have more information about this sequence, you can check on this paper which have been published last year. Unfortunately, regarding the pollen data, it was also very weak, so we cannot precisely say which type of plants they were growing. Regarding anthropogenic soil, we found several of them around Al-Hajba, and they are all sharing the same facies, the same characteristic. They have a crumbly structure, they are super rich in salt and in gypsum, which means that they have been wet and dry, wet, dry, wet, dry, so linked to likely irrigation. And those anthrosoil are most of the time found on top of slightly hydromorphic units. Regarding the pollen data on the soil, they are a little bit much more richer, but they didn't provide any interesting information regarding the cereals or the type of crops. So we know that there is a lot of diversity of pollen, but the precise diversity have been not well addressed. And we know also that there is a lot of herbaceous. Regarding the type of species which have been identified with pollen, so we have a weak density of species associated with cultivation, but we do have some. It's all the green spot you can see there. And so as you can see, it starts likely from the Aphid period, and it increased a lot during the late Bronze Age. Finally, we also conduct a survey on the vegetation, and the vegetation is quite the same, in fact. I mean, than the modern vegetation, it's just the cover is a little bit more dense. And regarding the type of charcoals that have been found in the building 1 and 5 of Al-Hajba, we can say that the fuel were slightly different. Like in building 1, they prefer to use Sisyphus as a fuel for charcoal, and in building 5, they prefer to use prosopis. And finally, we also find from a carpological remain a lot of dates, stone and sperm that have been found in Aphid layers. So we can say that in Al-Hajba, during the Aphid period, we had some palm crops around. And regarding unfortunately, regarding the pollen, since it's mainly the male, the date palm male, which is spreading pollen, and they are not producing any fruit, so maybe that's why we don't find so much pollen around. The monography about this project is nearly finished, and so as soon as it is out, if you want more detail, I recommend you to check.
you, Tara. We have time for maybe one question, if there's a question out there. All right, well, thank you very much, Tara, and the Umweltwandel team. All right, so our next speaker is, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. I'm so sorry, Pia. Maria Pia. You all know Pia, right? Majorano, thank you. My Italian is abysmal, but Pia is a researcher with the with the Institute of Archaeology for the Czech Academy of Sciences. She is involved with numerous projects in the Sultanate of Oman, including co-directing the Herds in Oman project, which she will be talking about today. She is also part of the Arabian Seashores Project and the Czech Archaeological Mission to Dukum. And today she will be speaking about returning places, exploring Neolithic mobility, and place persistence in the Hajar Piedmont.
Hi everyone. Thanks for the organization for this wonderful event. It's an honor for me to be here after many years of fieldwork in Oman, presenting our contribution to the archaeological research in the country. Today I'll be speaking after many years spent on the coast, and partly very little part of my research has been dedicated to the inland sites. And today I want to speak about this recent project I've been running with my colleague Lucas Proctor in the last years. While the Neolithic on the coast is well understood thanks to the several projects starting from the Joint AD project and then the Arabian Seashore Mission, but also the work of several other colleagues along the coast, the Neolithic inland is still largely unknown. Some of the previously discovered sites, like Jebel Al-Alouya, discovered and published by the French team 10 years ago, Wadi Ibra, Lisk-2, discovered by the German, and Hail al-Sar, where the Italian team is working now, have something in common, which is generally the presence of stone structures, circular, subcircular, the presence of fireplace visible already on the surface, and the lithic scatters. But none of them have been, until recently, investigated in depth to try to really understand the chronology and the use of these kind of sites. Initially, we came to identify the KHS complex as part of the German team working in the area, Steffi Doper and Konrad Schmidt, who supported us in the framework of their project Al-Mudaibi Survey and Umweltwandel project. The KHS complex consists on a wide distribution of Neolithic surface finds, raw material outcrops in the north area of the Sufrat al-Kashba. The discovery of these large sites brought us to establish a new project with the specific goal of contextualize the inland Neolithic phenomenon, especially questions related to subsistence, mobility, and adaptation to climate fluctuation. The largest of the discovered sites is Kashba A, which is the focus of our presentation today. KHS-A is located at the top of a relict Pleistocene terrace and consists of a huge amount of stone features and lithic scatters. The stone features are often very eroded and very hard to distinguish apart. This area specifically is the best, what we identified as best preserved, and where there is the higher concentration of stone features, and we decided to start our investigation from this specific place. And this is how it looks at the end of the last season. And we decided, in fact, as you can see, to go pretty wild and pretty extensive, because after the first test in the area from 2022 and 23, this area proved to have a very good potential for radiocarbon dating as the preservation of charcoal is extremely good, and also the preservation of the layer, in fact, is pretty well, the layers are pretty well preserved. This is one of the biggest trench that we started excavating a few years ago. And as you can see, it presents a large number of stone features. Most of them are combustion, connected to combustion events, but probably of different, slightly different time and different use, because some of them are just pits full of ashes, other are very well preserved fireplaces. In other, we found a high number of animal bones. The radiocarbon dating, this is just, these are the results that we have already published, and there are plus 20 dates that we received recently, and more than 30 submitted after the last season. But we can see the consistent occupation of this area during the 6th millennium, half of the 6th millennium BC, and then a second occupation at the beginning of the 4th. What we don't know now is if the hiatus at the first half of the 5th millennium corresponds to a non-occupation of the site, or we just have to hit the right spot in the next season. And that's why we decided in last December to expand further the area of the excavation. And as you can see, there are several other stone structures. Most of them are fireplaces, but in this area specifically, the bones are better preserved, and there is a higher amount of them. While expanding the first one, we observed the best preservation I've ever seen in any Neolithic site of the charcoal. In this fireplace, the feature number 3, we have more than 10 centimeter layer of pure charcoal that Lucas didn't even have to look at the microscope to see, that is rich in Avicennia marina, the mangrove tree. And we will go back to this topic a little bit later. But aside, I mean, together with the excavation, we also wanted to solve what our colleague that joined the mission just this year defined as the pareidolia nightmare, which is basically what happens when you find threatening faces and pictures in a random association of shapes and forms. And when we looked at the photogrammetry that was made first by Konrad Schmidt and then by Page, it's really, really hard to identify organic and non-ephemeral stone structures. So we tested with Dr. Paulsen from Dartmouth College different methods, and the thermography proved to be one of the best one. Now, believe me or not, but most of the dark blue dots are stone structures and features present in the subsurface. As you know, thermography detects hidden surfaces by capturing temperature differences caused by buried features heating and cooling differently from surface rocks. To test this, we first observed the picture, and we found some pretty coherent association of this feature: round circles of round stone structures, rectangular one, which are pretty different from what you can see as the modern vegetation. And then the next step was the ground truthing of one of them. So we selected the circle of features, one small portion, we cleaned all of it. This is 20 meters per 16. And in one portion we dig, and the correspondence between what is a dark blue spot and a fireplace, it's really perfect. So in the next years, in the next season, we want to test different different areas on the slope, on the top of the terrace, to see how well the thermography, in fact, give the picture of this site. Moving to the assemblages, and one of my favorite parts. The lithics in the area is not really exciting. It's most of it, we have the full chaîne opératoire, the cores, débitage, most of it except for the cortical part, because we think the raw material outcrops are very close to the site. So we think they just shaped roughly the cores and brought them to the site to finish the flint knapping there. And they produce mainly like daily use tools, notches, it's full of borers, and a few bifaces, which are not really the best ever found in the Neolithic, but still there is pretty much of them. Interesting is also the presence of a limestone assemblage. Now, limestone is always associated to very old Paleolithic areas, never during the Neolithic. But there is an outcrop of this kind of fine limestone, very close to the terrace. And we think they probably used this when they needed larger tools. The chert, close to Kashba, in the area of Kashba, is very good in quality, but the blocks are always highly fractured. So it's very hard to get out big blades or big pieces to be shaped. Even if the site is not a workshop for projectile points, there is a very low amount of them. We survey the area up and down. There is always stuff that we discover every year, like the beautiful fusiform in the lower part of the picture. Unfortunately, from surface, both the foliate and the fusiform point, while the plano-convex and the apex of the trihedral were found in the excavation corresponding to the 6th millennium BC, which is what we were in fact expecting. But the presence of the fusiform matched very well with the arrowheads that were discovered previously by Steffi and her team during the survey in the area. And these are correspond very well from the typical arrowheads that are produced during the 5th millennium in the whole region, in the north and south Sharqiya, and especially in Swea, where we have a real workshop of this kind of projectile points, in Ras Akalla, discovered by Biaggi, but also a few of these specimens are present in Fins, in Ruwais, and Ras Al Hamra. So pretty well coherent with what we were expecting. Other kind of stone objects are the grinding stones, hammer stones are everywhere. Just one axe was discovered this year, and it's basically a simple pebble where only the active part was shaped and polished, and this very nice shaft straightener, which are not very common in a Neolithic site. The only one that we know until now are, in fact, in the Rub al-Khali. Also, an interesting aspect was the discovery of this tethering stone in the excavation. Tethering stones are always collected and found and detected all over the Wadi terraces or in the interdunal basin, like in the Rub al-Khali sites, but never in the deposit. And this one was at the bottom of our first trench, which is very interesting because in this case, I think it's really not a trapping stone, but more of a tethering one to keep some animals at the site. Another interesting aspect is the huge amount of shell beads and unworked shells coming, of course, from the coast. The main species are the Polynices mammilla, which were also found by the team in Hail al-Sar, and also the small conus. The amount of shell ornaments is higher compared to the soft stone one, but one bead in the red circle on the top is particularly interesting and nice because we know there is a workshop of this kind of beads on the coast that was discovered by the French team a few years ago.
There is a certain time when really deflation becomes very intensive.
Yeah.
And tools are really coming up from sediments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This could also happen, especially in an area where it looks like you are exposed.
Yes, it's an exposed terrace, but on the other way, differently from the coast, for example, or area where there is much more sand that damage more consistently the surface of the material. Here there is no major. And I think also the kind of event that protected this site, because normally on these very middle-high terraces, there is no deposit left. We excavated, we tested many, even with Vincent on the coast. Sometimes you just find 5 centimeters of dust, and in this case, the site is really locked. So probably the flood even helped in protecting some of these artifacts.
Yeah, well, sorry, one more thing is about preservation of the charcoal. Because you have intensive charcoal, which means that there is an intensive vegetation.
Yes,
Yeah, and they are well preserved.
yes.
I mean, to have this kind of situation that where you have really massive plant collection and you have intensive preservation. I mean, there is either a very sudden change in the environment, which makes that, or otherwise organic material is going to work with this vegetation. I mean, climate is not going to go very dry very fast.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
No. But in fact, I mean, the site was occupied in the Holocene humid period, actually at the optimum of this phase. And then we know that aridity increased, but not that abruptly. And the site is occupied until the beginning of the arid phase, in fact, the real arid one. What we think is that the condition at the time, and especially the higher humidity, the floods, maybe much more water, helped in locking these areas. Sometimes in some fireplace, you can really see the lamination of the mud, the prehistoric mud, that probably locked the site. This is what...
Thank you.
Tara has some comment, in fact. This is very linked to her study, so it's better inside. I don't know why I removed the glasses.
No, yes, in that case, the terrace level is at least Middle Pleistocene, so it's completely stable during the Holocene, and it's locked by a lot of dust, and this dust increase because of vesicular horizon, and yes, it can be helped by the presence of vegetation, of course.
Thank you, Tia. Oh? I've lost the mouse.
Apologies, the computer is frozen. Is there IT help anywhere? Yeah, the screen.
What? Like that, just with the movie, just to get to kill.
If you think you know how to fix it, go for it, but there's just no cursor. That seems to be present. Don't have you.
So which one? This one? Okay, check you up.
Thank you very much. All right, we are back in business. So for our final paper of the day, will be presented by Niccolò Mazzucco. Apologies again for my pronunciation. Niccolò is an associate professor at the University of Pisa, where he occupies the chair of prehistory of agriculture and prehistory of complex societies. In Oman, he has directed research at the site of Hayal al-Shara in Rastak, which he will talk about today in his paper, Hayal al-Shara, Rastak in the southern Batna, chronological and paleoeconomic and paleoenvironmental reconstruction of a late Neolithic campsite in the Al-Hajar foothills.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you all, you to be here, and the minister for this conference, the organizer, and also my colleagues from the Sultan Qaboos University for supporting this research. So this presentation will have many points in common with the previous one from Maria Pia, and did almost a twin presentation, I would say, not only because of some similarities in the site we are presenting, but also in the general aims of the project. Also in this case, this project, the aim of the project was to try to combine all the information we have about the coastal occupation of the eastern coast of Arabian Peninsula, that we know that from the late, early Holocene and Middle Holocene presented a huge amount of sites that testify the presence of semi-permanent communities, semi-permanent communities specialized in fishing and mollusk gathering, but also relying on some herding and hunting activities. Combine this information with information from the inland territories, which until a few decades it was not so much known, but we saw also from Maria Pia presentation that there is a growing amount of information indicating that there are communities that are moving also in inland territories and probably relying on some herding and hunting activities. So this project wanted to explore this in the Rustak region, and this was also possible thanks to the kindness and the openness of cooperation of the Alti Commission from my colleagues Sara Pizzimenti and Khaled Douglas and the other colleagues of, say, Sultan Qaboos. And thanks to their hospitality, we started with the first survey that allowed us to detect some lithic scatters in the inside of the algar. This is one example in which we found some lithic assemblage combining chert quartz and hyaline quartz in the interior of the Algar Mountains. And then near Rustak, other lithic scatters that were in the same area that was already tested and surveyed by Derek Kenneth and his team. And in particular, one site that seemed to us very interesting is the High Al-Sark site that was tested inside this project by Knax Bresk and his colleagues. And so it seemed a very interesting site because they identify one or two lithic scatters that were protected in under more or less 10-15 centimeters of sandy sediments. That it seemed something very relevant for the type of archaeological find of that usually you have in the inland of Oman. And so I have also to thank them because we contacted them and asked for the possibility of continue the investigation at this site. You can see here the Pleistocene terrace over the Wadi Satan in which these lithic scatters were identified. And so during the last 2 years we carried out more extensive excavation to try to understand better the type of site of occupation that we have at High Al-Sark. And so we decided to open a larger area in between some test pit excavated by Knax and Knax Bresk. And we tested an area that was not previously tested. And in the first trench we opened, we realized that, this Pleistocene terrace was maybe incised and forming a slope, and then the slope was filled by sandy sediment. And in the eastern corner of this trench, we found some lithics inside the sandy deposit. So we opened another area more east to the first one, and in this we start finding a larger amount of lithics and some structure. So here you can see the situation in 2024. And after 2 years of campaign, we were able to identify the remainings of a possible dwelling structure, a complete hut that is defined by a series of post holes and wedges, stone wedges, that follow a rather circular shape, or a little elliptical. With measurements are about 4 meter for 3 meter and a half. And this, you can see this feature from another angle. And these were the type of wedges and post-hole we found, many of them with still charcoal inside, rather well preserved. And on the just outside, on the perimeter of this hut, we found a very clear heart with a lot, in this case, of charcoals, so very intensive combustion activity. This is not the only one. We found also other smaller one that inside had also a considerable amount of combustion activities, but were less clearly structured. And then on the northern side, we discovered just on the side, but probably under this hut, the presence of this circular pit, rather huge, filled with a layer of packet stone and then 2 layers, one very organic rich. There were some charcoal also, but not so many as the heart, but it was more very rich from an organic point of view. We also tested some chemical analysis, gas chromatography, but we didn't get any result. Anyway, it's interesting that also Bretsky and Parton found some similar feature in other trenches that was, I don't know if they ever excavated this, but it was in a preliminary way maybe interpreted as a burial, but inside our structure we didn't find anything, only 2 lithics, so we still a bit, the interpretation is still a bit unclear. Anyway, the other things we wanted to do in this area is to understand better the geomorphological setting and also the paleoenvironmental setting. So we tested a pit until the bedrock and we sampled it for pollen analysis. And we get some enough pollen, even if the pollen percentage is not especially rich, but still enough to have a sun diagram. And so we can see a situation. The datings of this sequence are still, we don't have the result, but we will have the result of the sequence. Anyway, we will see a datings for the occupational layer. So we don't know when it started, this sequence, but anyway, what we have is in general a dominance of herbaceous taxa that prevail in almost all layers. So we can see that we have a steppe-like or semi-arid vegetation, which is totally reasonable. But the occupational layer, it's coincide with a phase with a more forested or more rich in vegetation environment that might indicate that we have a phase which even more moist or humid phase in which the site was occupied. And then for the superficial layer, after the abandonment of the site, we have an important presence of Aspodelius pollen, which is a species related to drought episode or to a more strong degraded environment, also because of human impact. So the species that we found are species like tamarix, but also alnus pollen, which is quite surprising. And these both species suggest that there was a relatively near water source. In the case of the alnus, we also found the pollen in the antheral form. Then it means that the plants should not be so far away from the site. So we probably are in a situation of the presence of some freshwater source, such as spring or pools, seasonal pools. And this also makes sense because when we made other tests, we saw this huge, rather thick layer of bedded sandy sediment that were probably associated with this pool or seasonal spring. And this is further confirmed by the presence of some non-pollen pelinomorph that genus like Botricorus, Pediastrum, and Rivularia are some algae and some plants that indicates the presence of shallow, stagnant, slow-moving water. So this suggests that the occupation coincided with a moment of local humidity and presence of seasonal water, probably. that were also favorable for grazing. Indeed, we also found the presence of coprophilous fungi that indicate its occasional presence, so what not the presence of intense grazing activity, but likely the presence of some grazing animals, so possibly associated to mobile herding practice, even if the bones are not conserved in the site, so we cannot totally confirm it. We also got a nice result from the study of the charcoals, and we see all the presence of probably tamarids and xiphilos species were probably locally growing, but our other species like Avicennia type species, as we saw with Maria Pia, were probably not local. They were probably taken from some more distant places. This hut is associated with abundant lithic assemblage, which is scattered all over the layer. In the surface, there is no lithics. Of course, the area has been surveyed before, but it's totally the first 10 centimeters of the sediment. There is no lithics. So they are all starting from the from 10 centimeter more or less. And most of the assemblage is composed of this radiolarian chert that the assemblage is very simple from a technological point of view. Flaking activity are mostly made in an opportunistic way by exploiting the natural surface of this radiolarian chert that are already present in quadrangular blocks. So it's very easy to using the angle to produce some laminar flakes, some quadrangular flake that are in general little retouched. So even we found only 2 foliated pieces with these bifacial arrowheads, but I even doubt that they were produced locally actually, because we don't find even the blanks are a bit different, and there is also some variety in the type of radiolarian chert. But this we found in Rustac area. It's very easy to find in the ophiolite the presence of this type of formation, and so in Rustac we found similar materials, meaning that probably the catchment of this raw material was local in the proximity of the site. But then we have also some other type of chert that were present in rather small quantities with these yellows and grayish chert. They were flaked. The chain operatoire is not complete. There are some flake that are reflaked on the side, so we have a debitage on flake, and then some small quadrangular flakes, some bladelets, rather irregular also. And we try to understand the origins of the materials, so we mostly check for the Algar mountains where we know their limestone formation are present that can present this type of chert. And we also already found this material on the surface when we first make some survey into the Algar area. And also this was already present in the literature from our Czech colleagues that found similar material, cache of similar material. So we explored some wadis, and near Wadi Al-Hala we found indeed in the wadi from the Jebel Kar materials that in our opinion are of course in secondary deposition very altered and with a lot of cracks inside, but they can be similar type of cherts. And a third type of chert always present in small quantities is this sometimes with very huge dimension for the high Al-Sark lithic assemblage. This might come from, in our opinion, from the shallow marine platform limestone of the Arayan platform, and we found that you can find easily, for example, in Salute. It's plenty of this type of chert, but we have to finish the petrographic work analysis to test if these raw material are really similar also from a microscopic point of view. On the other side, we have a rather small shell assemblage, but relevant for the understanding of this site, which include these shell beads on Polynesia mammalia or Engina mendicaris, some shell fragments, and all of this suggests that this site might function as a middle point in a mobility between the coastal and the mountains area. So globally, we have a very similar situation to what is being presented by Maria Pia, and it's very nice that we can have this parallel vision of this occupation. And for the chronology, it's still a bit unclear, because we have, on a fragment of a shell, we have a date to the second half of the 6th millennium, which in contrast, the datings from the previous work of Knats-Brekske indicate the first half of the 6th millennium. And the most interesting that is the dating of one of these features with a lot of charcoals gave a much recent date, which I would tend to believe that it could be more strong, because in the other case we are just dating the moment in which the shell is dead and not its use. So in this case, but we are waiting for new datings that are ongoing, and we will have a much clearer situation. So all these features will be dated, and we can understand better, especially the duration of this hut, this dwelling. So in conclusion, this combined approach with palynology, non-poly and palynomorph, anthropological evidence allow us to reconstruct the paleoenvironmental condition in which this occupation took place, and it was probably a more humid phase, at least locally associated to local freshwater availability within an otherwise open semi-arid landscape. And the presence, even if discontinuous, of coprophilous fungal spores and also soil disturbance suggests that we have in the presence of herbivores and low-intensive grazing, and also considering the low presence of arrowheads, it makes sense that this site was mostly associated with herding practice and mobility rather than specialized hunting camp. And probably this hut we found is not alone, because in the area you can find lithy scatters all over. And in most of the case we tested along the flank of the hill, and there is a lithy scatter under more or less always 10 centimeters of sediments, even if the stratigraphic sequence is a little bit different outside of this little valley where we excavated. So it could be that we have a larger campsite in this area, making a connection between the coast and the mountain. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Anita? Pia?
But in terms of tools, artifacts, retouched pieces, like the majority, you also have all these notches and borers. In our case, is really the majority. Okay.
There is, formal tools like retouched tools. There is some like nice retouch. It's very low. There is some notches, but the borers, for example, I cannot say that there is some typological nice borer.
Okay.
So mostly these, it seems we have to study from a newswear point of view to see, to understand a little better. I think it will be possible. It's normally not bad preserved, but really mostly these, even the laminar flake are not retouched normally. Very few retouch, and I would not say that we have a lot of borers. Few of them, in general, we also have a Yalin quartz that it's flaked on site, but also, most of the blanks doesn't seem to be transformed at all.
Mm-hmm. And this is interesting because compared to our site, we have a lot of retouched pieces that you can classify as a double notch, a single notch, or scrapers, or so. Okay, thank you. Well,
thank you for your presentation. We are very happy, I think, with Pia as well to see it. It's super nice because we were looking for those huts for many years. I have question regarding pollen because as you have seen, we had issue with pollen, and I see that you were more successful even if your context is not that good. So I wanted to understand how you manage that, and maybe the amount of soil the palynologists analyze, and I wanted to know if you have any idea of the amount of sediment she needs to collect to have to complete this work.
Yeah, the first year I came to the palynologist with some tubes.
Yes.
Told me, no way, you have to need more sediment.
Yes.
So I took at least 100, 150 grams. I even took some bags like this because I counted, but finally used but the percentage of pollen will be never like...
No, we never reach the 300.
Still, I mean...
It's good information.
But my palynologist used to work also in mountains and in pit bogs. And so for him, it was like, there is...
No, they are very sad here, yes.
But I say still it's very interesting that we can get this information.
So at least, yeah, minimum 100 gram, 200 gram, but yes.
100, I would say. So.
Which is a lot for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. I do have one final announcement that yes, thank you.